Every facet of modern life is built upon the lie of liberation, an idea which is based on a most preposterous notion, that of a supposed subjugation. It is all but to say that we, the cattle, should be thankful for the ability to exercise such supposed freedoms. Give me liberty or give me death is an old American revolutionary slogan that for many, especially in the US, represents a greatest ideal. An ideal that could perhaps be regarded as perennial, the search for freedom, that is. The supposed ideal today seems to represent the very basis of all that we have come to praise and pride ourselves on as being foundational to our so-called Western civilization. This video does not want to be a thesis on the meanings of freedom per se, but rather an introduction to its misunderstood forms and to the archetype that lives by such endless freedom, namely the archetype of the rebel. And consequently, we will look at how his rebellion has seeped into every facet of what our common civilization has come to represent. The term liberation, in this case, is synonymous with rebellion, revolt, or revolution, as being the act of undermining and destroying a preceding order, an institution of authority which has had its basis in ancient teachings and was further developed within the frameworks of Christianity. This institution that I speak of is not a mere building of brick and stone or of cement. It is much more than even a collection of great minds at any given point in time. It represents the collective wisdom of more than 2 millennia of history, of some of the greatest minds that came together to further develop on the basis of generations prior that which could be regarded as truth, universal, God-given, and unequivocal truth. Each generation did not seek to destroy what their fathers and grandfathers built, but rather continue their work. Having learned everything there was to learn from them, they developed new ideas that, however, did not contravene to those of their forefathers, but rather expanded upon them, bringing greater clarity and meaning to the ancient order that was based on fundamental laws that had to be kept. Law, and by extension justice, is at the forefront of any civilization. Justice thus cannot be blind. Law must be clear but contextual, and its purpose is to transpose on earth, as best as man is capable of, the higher laws. In opposition to the laws which may be called wisdom, stands modern intellectualism with its primarily foreign origins that exploits the inherent curiosity present in the thinking mind by playing on the hubris present in most who are of above modest intellectual means. The greatest victims fall into this intellectualism are those who some refer to as midwits. Think the primary demographic of websites such as Reddit, for example. These individuals are capable of just enough thinking to perfectly understand and internalize the propaganda disseminated from the higher levels that is specifically catered and targeted towards them, but not capable of enough thinking to discern how they are being played as a result of their vanity. These people are the greatest representation of the sin of pride, at least when it comes to their supposed intellect, as they believe themselves in being aligned in all matters with the so-called experts, to be infallible, and all who dissent to be heretical. These are the so-called useful idiots of Lenin, and the foremost bearers of progress, as being the further continuation of the rebellion and the further destruction of what little remains of the ancient order. The old order discussed above is what Western civilization actually is, founded in the Greco-Roman world and developed into Christendom. the laws are all still there, hidden in plain sight. As a matter of fact, today they might be clearer than ever, if one knows where to look, that is. It is in fact clear to me that the truth is always the very opposite of the lie being the norm of all modern discourse, as being based in rebellion itself. The order is based on what we may call the laws of God, and it is strictly hierarchical. At the basis of civilization, there is not the individual, but the family unit. Within the family, there is no equality either. Man and woman are not equal, as they are not of the same cloth, and have not the same purposes or capabilities and responsibilities. The man is the head, the woman the body. He leads and she follows. Woman is subservient to man. Man is not subservient to woman. But he is not too free to do as he pleases either. Man cannot reign as a tyrant, and while he does not answer to his woman, he directly answers to God. Thus, he must be just. He must treat his lawful wife with respect, and provide for her, and protect her. Together, man and woman may raise a healthy family, a strong family that is independent. Independence is true freedom, the freedom to do good rather than to do evil, not being forced to rely on an inherently evil system. A strong family that works together, a man and a woman, each doing what they are naturally meant to do, as one being a leader and provider, and the other being a follower and a carer, stands unshaken at the prospects of rebellion. The rebel is the one who is prideful and foolish. He thinks himself above an order that has existed since the very beginning. He cannot stand to be alone in rebellion, and as truth does not suit his purposes, he deceives those who are not smart enough to know they are being deceived, to join in his rebellion. Children are taught to rebel against their parents. Women are taught to rebel against the authority of men. And men are taught to rebel against the law itself, the law which dictates that they must make sacrifices for others. Thus, modern people come to regard virtue as uninteresting or stuck up, while vice and rebellion are idolized. This is in fact just a symptom of a much greater cause, the denial of the law itself, the denial of even the existence of a law. Charles Baudelaire, the French poet, is quoted as saying, "The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist." This is an eloquent way of describing the architect and the architecture of the relation between pride, foolishness, and rebellion that plague all useful idiots, which have an unparalleled monopoly over the mainstream discourse of today. The appreciation of the liberty to sin, not even thinking whose will one is practicing, furthermore, thinking it is his own, showcases nothing but immense foolishness, and is what stands at the basis of the spiritual destruction of the modern men in all actuality. They, the useful idiots, however, do not understand what they are doing and who they are serving more often than not, but they are serving him nonetheless. Here I would like to interject a few verses from the aforementioned poet, from the Unforeseen in English. "The clock says the condemned is ready, you may call for him. I have advised in vain as to those flaws which threatened. Man is blind, deaf, fragile like a wall, in which an insect lives and gnaws, where at a presence stranger to few, greeted by none, appears. While met, he mocks, have I not seen you pass before my sacred vessel in communion of joyness at the black mass? Each of you builds in secret a temple to my fame. Each one of you in secret has kissed my fall behind. Look at me, hear this laughter, Satan is my name. Lewd, monstrous as the world, oh blind. Oh, hypocritical men, and did you think indeed to mock your master, trick him till double wage be given? Did it seem likely to such prices be decreed, to be so rich and enter heaven? The poet recognizes the steep price one has to pay for rebelling against the righteous order of God. Indeed, two prices may not be decreed. The rebel entices men with everything that is worldly, with everything that the worldly tell him he must have, in order to fill the emptiness of his loss of faith, caused by living in the same perverse world of their creation. This rebellion manifests itself particularly in the disregard for values and principles, which is promoted particularly hard amongst the youth that end up not being raised by their parents, but rather by the progressive state, allowing for the further development of progress with every new generation. But as children grow up without the righteous authority of a father, even if he may be physically present in the household, more often than not, his prerogatives of authority and better knowledge have been relinquished to the schooling system. They become spiritually paganistic, growing up to be, for all intents and purposes, wild men like Enkidu. As such, they begin to rebel, particularly in their teenage years, fact which has been normalized. But it is not normal. This rebellion comes as a result of growing up with a lack of understood and respected authority, and this opens up the door to self-destructive and antisocial behaviors. Women, for their part, are taught to rebel against their very instincts of finding a husband that will raise their children, instead playing the part of prostitutes all throughout their, quote, best years of their lives. Finally, men is taught from youth he has no right of authority whatsoever, that he is in fact an oppressor if he attempts to correct the misbehaviors of his woman or of his children. I remember being taught as early as 3 years old in kindergarten that 1. Boys and girls are equal. 2. A boy shall never hit a girl, quote, not even with a flower. And 3. One should never take doing justice upon himself. All this to crush the male spirit, heroism, and righteous authority from the get-go. Just like Saturn in Roman mythology, revolution, and by extension rebellion of any kind, eventually ends up devouring its own children. It is all nothing but a trick, an inversion of the truth present at all levels of modern thought, as all we have been taught by our media and governments has been disseminated by many voices, but all coming from the same body, like the demons called Legion.
Facts first.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish things aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.